Also, make sure you stay tuned for
You're listening to the NORML Network, where the time is 420, 24/7, 365. Live from Portland, Oregon, it's time for A Different View, a lively women's roundtable discussion on marijuana issues, brought to you in part by the NORML Women's Alliance, with Portland Dispensaries Examiner Jennifer Alexander, Alternative Medical Choices founder Iva Cunningham, and Moms for Marijuana founder Sarah Frank. Now, here's A Different View.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. You're listening to A Different View. I'm Iva Cunningham and I'm with Jennifer Alexander, and this is A Different View. We've got a great show tonight. Jennifer and I will be getting down into the dirt and debating a couple of things. I'm really looking forward to Blunt Wrap, which is at the end of the show tonight. We have our special guest from the NORML Women's Alliance, Diane Goldstein or Stein?
Steen.
I always get those screwed up. But anyway, and then Lindsey Rinehart from Idaho Compassionate Care Act.
Yes.
And then
Compassionate Choice Act.
Compassionate Choice Act. Boy, there's too many of these out there right now. But then there's some exciting news. Some good stuff going on. How's things going with you, Jennifer?
Oh, pretty good. Been busy. This last weekend we did the marijuana march.
That's right.
Yeah. Kind of sad to see how few people are coming out when it's so time for it. It's so time. We should be flooding the streets. So a lot of people showed up, but it's still disappointing to see that there isn't
that cohesiveness.
Well, I think it's ultimately a lot of people feel like, it's already legal.
Yeah, I think that there's the apathy for sure. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah.
People have decided that it's already legal.
It's like so close, though. So show your support.
Not quite yet. Not quite yet.
And of course, everybody that you march past is honking and waving and holding up their joint.
Why are you here? Well, and a lot of people, and I had a clinic that day, so I couldn't get down there, but I did get there after the march as everybody was returning, and I was surprised that there weren't that many people, but I tried to come out and show my support anyway. And, I think maybe the rain kind of kept people away. But there was also events going on all over the place that did draw huge crowds. Like 400 people. Mm-hmm. I know Eugene had one that always draws a lot of people. Seattle, Vancouver, I think.
Well,
had
these
one
are
too.
global marches.
Yeah,
it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, but I'm just saying they probably...
Toronto had 20,000 people.
And
Yay, Toronto!
Yes. That's what I want to see. In a city that has 700,000 people, what do you mean we can't get 20,000 people to come out and just march for 5-10 minutes?
Well, they've been marching a lot for Occupy. Maybe
all
that's
marched
it.
out.
Yeah, I'm all marched out.
So long as they vote, I'm happy.
That's right. Well, we're going to have a great show. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back. You're listening to A Different View.
A Different View. Wow. A Different View. We'll be right back.
Network brings you the best in daily toker tunes at 3 and 9 o'clock Pacific Time, AM and PM, every weekday. Each day features a different genre, including Roots Monday, Electric Tuesday, Irie Wednesday, Groovin' Thursday, and Rockin' Friday. Then on weekends from 10 to 3 p.m. Pacific, we mix them all together in our weekend music party.
Welcome back. You're listening to A Different View. To start off the night, we were going to talk a little bit about the story that came out in this last week. Daniel Chong, a young man who was at a house where they were celebrating 420, the National Toke It Up Day. and the house was raided, and after a string of events, he was allowed to leave. Only they had left him in a cell and forgotten about him. So he wasn't under arrest. He wasn't in any kind of trouble. They had even actually offered him a ride home before forgetting about him. And they left him in the cell for 5 days. During these 5 days, he was literally hallucinating, trying to commit suicide.
No water.
Food. Yeah, and when he was screaming, he said that he could hear people out in the hall and stuff, but nobody came to check on him. And that makes you wonder, is it just that normal to hear people screaming?
Well,
let me out, let me out.
Well, it's like, are they so preoccupied that they forget? How do you forget somebody in a holding cell? How do you do that?
Well, and the one thing that really bothers me about this whole story, and maybe it shouldn't, and maybe it's just me being cynical, but the part that really, really bothers me is that they just paid for his care when they found him, and then apologized.
No, I'm sorry about that.
And said that they would do an investigation to see what went wrong. And it's like, if I just forgot one of my kids for 5 days, I'd be locked up in jail.
Right.
You know what I mean? So why do we put people into somebody else's custody? And then, we'll figure out what we did wrong. And that's like good enough. I don't think it is.
No, it's not good enough. There'll be a commission that oversees the commission or committee that oversees the commission.
And it's probably all the same people that are getting paid to do this
right.
job.
Well, and by Barbara Boxer and I think another...
Congressman Darrell Issa? Issa or Issa? ISSA.
Anyway, they're both asked for an investigation. I'm thinking that's the least that you can do.
But it frustrates me that a man is basically left in solitude, tortured. He was trying to write into his own arm, "Bye, Mom, I love you," because he thought he was dead. He was drinking his own urine. And all they can do is investigate?
Well, and then, what kills me is he's picked up in a raid, okay? He's held for something he didn't even have anything to do with. He didn't have marijuana in his system. He didn't use marijuana. He wasn't using the drugs. He just happened to be at the party.
But even if he was?
But
I do have to correct. He does admit to being at the party to toke.
Yeah, but even if he was, I don't care how high you are. That's not the justified way of handling it.
Why are we? Well, it goes back to if it were legal in the first place, he wouldn't have been arrested. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But he ends up taking meth on the fifth day because they have that in there.
Yeah, there was some powdery substance on the floor, is what I read.
But it highlights the problem. He's like, we can't keep drugs
out of a locked cell.
What makes us think that this method of locking people up is going to work in the first place? But even if you don't care about cannabis at all, you're not a user. Even if you don't support it, this is a situation that you should pay attention. This could be your kid. And
this is what I tell people all the time. I mean, we hear all the time stories about where people that had no drugs, that were perfectly respectable stand-up citizens with no questionable fringe activities. Not that marijuana is a fringe anymore, but nothing, you know. And they raided the wrong house. There was a story last year where they had left some 16-year-old in her underpants in middle of December in like the Northeast, because they were raiding her house and they had the wrong address.
Oh, it happens all the time.
So if people that are like, oh, well, I don't do anything wrong, so it doesn't affect. No, it affects you. The fact that somebody can come into your house and treat you that way is the problem.
Right. If it doesn't affect you, it affects somebody that you love. It will affect somebody you love. It's involved in every aspect of our life. It bothers me that things like this happen, and this hasn't been an outrage by the media. I've heard a couple of things, but I've never heard the outrage that should be around, the fanning around this story, because 5 days, no food, no water, starving to death under, United States custody, What the hell?
Yeah, no, this is a problem. It
so
definitely
is.
If
they'd left him there for another couple of days and they finally find him and he's, died, then what?
Yeah, no, there's a cover-up. That's why.
Oh, yeah, there's a cover-up.
There was a story when I first got involved in activism, even before I got my card here in Oregon, there was a story that I read about, and I want to say it was from like 2005, maybe 2000. I mean, it was a long time ago. At least in terms of cannabis reform. And the story was about a 90-year-old woman that somebody they had picked up on the street was a known cocaine user, dealer, and he basically pled to some deal with them to narc out where he got his cocaine and pointed to the house right up the way, which just so happened to be the home of a 90-year-old woman who didn't use any drugs. The police busted down her door.
Well, she did, but they were legal prescribed.
Well, maybe, who knows? But the police busted down her door, and she had like the bars on her door. I mean, it was a scary neighborhood, you know?
Right.
And so she got out her husband's old rusty gun. It was like it probably had never been fired since he had died years before. And she shot off one shot up at the ceiling as these police are trying to bust down her door, not realizing they were cops. She thought that the local gang was breaking in, or scared little old woman. They shot her some 36 times.
Collateral damage,
and then planted a quarter ounce of marijuana in her basement, as though that quarter ounce would justify shooting a 90-year-old woman 36 times. Yeah. And I was just horrified. They were busted. These cops were prosecuted.
We just had the anniversary of Rachel Hoffman, too, which is another story.
Yeah. And they used her as an undercover informant in a much more serious drug crime than what she was picked up for marijuana or something like that, right?
And a small amount of personal amount.
And then they put her into a very dangerous situation where she's killed.
Where, the story that they set up for her to go into was not even plausible from the dealer's perspective. Like, why would you suddenly want that and that amount? You know what I mean? If it weren't some sort of setup.
The whole, I mean, there's story after story after story that shows the failure of this drug war. It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe that marijuana is good to understand that the drug war is a failed policy.
Well,
this is not working.
Well, I think that we've tried to do that all the time. It doesn't matter what the drug is. We want to lock people up for using, consuming. We want to lock them up for being addicts. We want to lock them up for that. But we don't want to treat them, you know, if there is an addiction or a health issue, treat it like a health issue.
Right.
You know, this idea of that we can just stash all of these people or these, subjective moral deviants to prison makes no sense. And look what's happening. We're running out of room.
Well, and the reality is that, I mean, there is an argument by a certain sector of the population, mostly the prohibitionists, but it spreads, you know, that all of these people that are ruining society for the rest of us should be locked up somewhere and we can make more room. but where do you draw that line?
Right.
You know what I mean? We can't lock up everybody. If we're locking up more people than anybody else in the world, maybe we should be rethinking this.
Right,
Because
yeah.
there are some horrible countries out there locking people up for weird stuff, and we think we're the free ones. But we have more people in jail.
More people in jail. The incentive to lock people up is crazy with private prisons. You know, with them profiting from, you know, human trafficking, if you will.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh, there's so much more to that story. It is sad that we have come so far in this fight, yet things like this still happen. You know, and it breaks my heart because this is a young man who's going to be traumatized for the rest of his life. Rachel Hoffman, no longer here. I mean, we all have stories of people that we've loved and we've lost in this war. And we all know people, every one of us know people that never touched marijuana but are affected by prohibition.
You know, the other thing that really bothers me, and I'll say that there's a number of people that need real help. And I feel that our system ignores those people. I mean, when you walk downtown, we live in Portland here. There's a large heroin problem here in Oregon. How many people are wandering the streets downtown and don't have the resources to get the help they need because we're referring people to drug courts, you know, where
we refer them to the
taking those
methadone
spots.
clinic. So we just switch out the drug. We take them to the methadone clinics. They get referred to methadone clinics.
Right. But instead of treating the addiction, I mean, there just isn't enough room for them. There just isn't.
Right.
It's fact.
Well, even if you have the means, exactly. Even if you have the means and the way to pay for a treatment center, you know, you still can't get in.
Right.
And
I think there's a
not
lot
enough
of people
beds,
that really
not enough-
need that help. I mean, if they have a serious addiction, they need that help. We shouldn't be demeaning what they're going through by putting people in there just to avoid a marijuana charge.
Well,
you know,
and there's not a
why
lot
don't we
of
use
funding.
that for something
There's
real?
not a lot of funding for those programs, and that's because people treat them as if they are the scourge of the society. And you know, we need as many of those as we need shelters.
Just a little update on the Daniel Chong story. Today on NORML Show Live, we covered the protest that NORML San Diego held on the Daniel Chong story. They're at the DEA headquarters there in San Diego. And, of course, Chong and his lawyers are suing a civil suit for $20 million. I did ask the attorneys that I was speaking to whether or not there might be constitutional challenge, federal civil rights suit for violations of, you know, Eighth Amendment or whatever else. There was no, we don't know. He says it could be a possibility, but we haven't spoken to any of Chong's actual lawyers. They're still, since they're in the negotiation for the case, they're kind of keeping tight-lipped right now. But that's the latest info we have, $20 million civil suit.
Well, and the really frustrating thing about that is that's $20 million that the taxpayers will pay
right.
to
or that
justify
comes from
the
asset
wrong
forfeiture.
Yeah,
but it's coming out of our pockets for the wrongdoing of either a department or individuals within that department. And that's true of anything that our officials do wrong. It's ultimately us paying for it, whether it's us paying for it
Right.
at the hands of them by being the Daniel Chongs of the world, or us paying for it by footing their bill for their errors.
Right. or implementing new changes and hiring new staff, because hopefully some people will get fired from this, or there's some new policy or procedure, or check.
We just got to
balances.
find a way to quit doing this.
Right. Yeah, the simplest thing.
That's where I'm
right.
at.
Yeah. Well, me too. The simplest thing is just to stop locking people up for something so silly.
The $20 million. I mean, $20 million is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but for what he went through, that doesn't sound like anything. I mean, no amount of money is going to fix that experience.
Well,
but at the
attorneys are
same
gonna get
time,
half of that. So, and you know they're going to probably try to settle somewhere.
it seems shallow. How much is your suffering worth? Oh, $20 million.
$1 million a day.
For 5 days would be
$5 million. I want to see him at least come away with $5 million.
At
He
least.
deserves $1 million a day.
I think that like I said, ultimately something needs to change in that whole structure. That shouldn't happen.
Well, I think that this case just highlights the insanity of this whole thing. How ridiculous the war on drugs is, how the war on marijuana is in the first place. It's a failed policy.
Last year there was that little saying going around a lot on Facebook, and I'd love to see it going around again. It's the drug war is a war on you and me, and just reminding people it's a war on you and me.
Whether you're medical, recreational,
doesn't
or
matter.
otherwise,
It doesn't matter if you don't even use marijuana. It's
right.
a war on you and me.
Exactly. It's a war on you and me. All right. Well, there's our music cue. We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to A Different View with Jennifer Alexander, and I'm Iva Cunningham. We'll be right back with Diane Goldstein from LEAP.
Let's get high. 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 Let's get
If I were to tell you that in America, right now, over 1 million children sell marijuana, what would you think? Would you think that any public policy that creates over 1 million teenage marijuana dealers needs to be re-examined and possibly amended? You would not be alone. The members of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka NORML, have been working since 1970 to reform marijuana laws such that responsible adults, not children, sell and use marijuana. Isn't it high time to reform America's misguided marijuana laws? This is Alan St. Pierre, Executive Director of NORML in Washington, D.C. Only concerned citizens can effectively end the federal government's nearly 70-year-old prohibition on responsible adult marijuana sales and use. Want to know more about how you can help? Contact us at NORML, toll-free, 888-67-NORML, or by visiting the organization's popular and informative webpage at NORML, NORML.org.
Different View is brought to you by the NORML Women's Alliance, a nonpartisan coalition of socially and geographically diverse women who believe that marijuana prohibition is a self-destructive and hypocritical policy that undermines the American family. They bring a contemporary approach to the policy debate and are proudly representing the interests of modern mainstream women who believe in legalizing marijuana.
Tonight's guest is Diane Goldstein, a former police officer and LEAP speaker, and also affiliated with the Coalition for Cannabis Policy Reform. Diane, are you there?
I am. Is this Jennifer or Iva?
This one's Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with cannabis. Just give us a little bit of an introduction.
You know what is, I spent almost 22 years in law enforcement in an agency in Southern California called Redondo Beach Police Department, and I came on in 83. I retired in 2004, and I was a child of the 70s, and so my viewpoint on cannabis has always been a little bit different because I understood from high school, because I smoked it, that it wasn't what the government portrayed it to be in regards to it being demonized. And when I got hired in law enforcement, is they looked at my background. I was very honest about my cannabis use, and in spite of it, they hired me, and I had an incredibly successful career. So after I retired, long story short, I started doing some research into kind of alternatives to the drug war policies, in large part based on a personal tragedy in our family. I had a brother that was a drug addict that passed away from a psychotropic medication. He had a couple really bad run-ins with law enforcement, with the judicial system. And it really changed my viewpoint, and at about that same time, Prop 19 came about in California. And I went and saw a debate, and I had been a fan of Judge Jim Gray for years, actually, going back to my law enforcement career since I lived in Orange County. And I went up to him at a debate and introduced myself, and he happened to get a hold of Neil Franklin, who's the executive director of LEAP, who was in Los Angeles at the same time, and met me and brought me into the LEAP fold, so to speak.
I like in the email that Kendra sent introducing, your background, it says that you had noticed that the drug war imposed a terrible cost on our families or on our financial resource in waging a war that we cannot win, not on enemy combatants, but on our neighbors, our families, and our friends. And I think that's ultimately what makes this such a disturbing policy, that it is.
You're right. And I think that what happens is, we can talk about the whole appropriate regulations of all drugs, but I really think the place that's so important for us to start, this is my view, I mean, the lead perspective is we need to regulate all drugs and remove the black market from all of it. But I think where we are going to start is, in fact, with cannabis. And I even hate using the terminology marijuana because that's a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It really truly is cannabis. It has an industrial use. It has a medicinal use. And you know what? No different than me drinking my glass of red wine right now as I'm on the radio with you. It has a socially responsible, acceptable use for responsible adults.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
Well, so it sounds like, and I thought you were around a lot longer involved in the movement, that you've only come into this recently, like you said, with Prop 19. Is that right? Or was it with that earlier Prop 19?
No, no. It was 2010 Prop 19.
Okay, yeah. No, I definitely value your background. I think that ultimately we need to see more and more officers who are doing this daily, that see up close and personal, how this affects people. Because you said that you managed narcotics units and didn't see this result, right? Like that it wasn't helping those people or helping anybody else. It was just impacting everybody in a negative way.
Well, I think with your, with your job as a police officer, you're in the streets with people. You're confronted with it day in, day out. You would see the harm. If you will, if there were any with marijuana use, I always equate it to when I worked at the hospital and we never repaired anybody or helped anybody who had, a side effect to marijuana, but lots of other drugs. Do you see what I'm saying? So the harm is different when you see it up close and personal.
You know what? You're absolutely right. We all can joke and kid about it, but there's the Funyun jokes by Jimmy Kimmel and
right.
And everything else. But in almost 22 years as a police officer, I never once went to someone's house or went to a fatal traffic accident who caused a fatal traffic accident solely because of cannabis, being under the influence of cannabis. Never went to someone's house who was a domestic violence suspect who beat the bejesus out of their wife or kids, because they smoked pot.
Right.
Alcohol, psychotropic meds, methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine.
Cough syrup.
We can. Yeah, I mean, we can go on and on, and I think that it really truly is a rhetorical war on cannabis that those in power started long ago, and people don't understand the history of it.
Right.
And in law enforcement, and I think this is the thing that really bothers me a lot, is now that I'm really working on public policy, I'm doing a lot of research, I'm back in school, is that the one thing that law enforcement has failed to do is to talk about the ethical issues relative to not only the war on cannabis, but the war on drugs, period. And in my career, I trained, I was, I taught, I wrote legislation, I did all sorts of stuff. And in all my exposure in almost 22 years, not 1 minute, not 1 hour, not 1 day of true training that said, hey, do you understand why marijuana is illegal? Do you understand that the drug laws are based on racism?
Right, and it always ends up in rhetoric.
Exactly. And if law enforcement really understood that, and if they trained law enforcement and say, there's some ethical considerations for us when we do our job.
Sure.
We, unfortunately, are in some aspects stuck doing this horrible job because of a very bad federal policy. But there are ways that you can do it that minimizes the harm, or you can start looking at alternatives and engage in smart policing strategies that mean more to your community.
So if given the chance to talk directly to a room full of other, law enforcement officers or, law enforcement officials of some sort, what do you think is the strongest message to get through to them, for them to understand, to fight on our side, I guess is what I'm saying?
I think the ethical consideration is a huge issue. Because for the most part, it's unfortunately cops are from the human race, and we have bad apples just like, every profession does. Mm-hmm. But you know what? For the most part, most of the police officers I know and I served with were honorable, ethical people who got into the job to do the right thing.
Right.
And so when you touch on the ethics and the morality of the issue, and then take it further into that there are other strategies that will make law enforcement safely and protect our kids, because they're down, our law enforcement is down to their last two arguments. This is the only two I ever hear anymore. Mm-hmm. What about the children? Mm-hmm. And what about those police officers that we lost in fighting this drug war?
Whenever I hear that argument, what about the children, I go, yes, exactly. What about the children? Yeah. They're getting lost in this war. They're getting affected by this. They're getting ripped out of their families. They're getting separated from their parents. They're getting neglected by a system that wants to just pull them away from parents. What about the children? The drug dealers who don't care will sell anything to them. They're Absolutely. Not checking ID. Why aren't we paying attention to what's really happened to the children instead of just saying, oh, this law will protect the children?
Yep. And again, I'm going to go back into training. And, part of the issue with the DEA, quite frankly, is they don't have an attachment to any particular community. And so they don't have, you start talking about law enforcement and theories of political philosophy. And law enforcement was really wrapped up into a social contract theory, hundreds of years ago in political philosophy that, we are the police and we are the public and the public is the police.
It's part of your community, right?
Yeah, but the DEA doesn't have that.
Right. They're completely unattached, so there is
They're
no accountability.
Unattached, and that's what allows them to go home and sleep in their beds at night, because they don't have any personal involvement in that community. They don't care about destroying the relationship between those local law enforcement officers and the community they serve. They basically just come in and destroy, pack their toys up, and go home and leave local law enforcement to deal with the emotional fallout that they leave.
So, Diane, we need to go to a break. We want to thank you so much for being on the show with us. Can you give any contact information for that organization, Coalition for Cannabis Policy Reform?
Well, you know what is, they're on Facebook, and, this is part of the coalition that's run by Dale Scotty Jones from Oaksterdam, so Oaksterdam will have plenty of information. But the other one that I want to encourage people to go to is www.leap.cc, and then join the Moms United campaign that now is aligned with the NORML Women's Alliance, LEAP, COPS, Moms and Students to End the War on Drugs.
Absolutely. www.leap.cc, and then join say the name of it again.
Moms United campaign
Moms
to End the
United
War on Drugs.
Excellent. We will definitely share that on our Facebook page, too. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for
Not
all the
a
work
problem.
you're doing.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Diane.
We're going to cut to a break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to A Different View.
Get the latest updates on the NORML Network by following NORMLNet on Twitter and liking NORMLNet on Facebook.
We're back with A Different View.
Hey, welcome back to A Different View. I'm Iva Cunningham, Jennifer Alexander. Boy, I'm just stumbling over my words tonight. Some good news on the legalization front. Florida has just submitted a bill. People United for Medical Marijuana in Florida just hit
An
the
initiative.
Initiative, excuse me. And then it's designed to, provide relief for terminally and seriously ill patients, give patients safe venue to obtain their medicine, so it sounds like they may be talking about dispensaries, allow patients to grow a limited supply, create a registry to help law enforcement distinguish law-abiding citizens, because, those that aren't sick enough to have it are not law-abiding. Decrease state health care costs with an inexpensive medication that provides lasting results, lower crime rate, blah, 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 blah. They did talk about jobs and boost their economy. They do bring that up, too.
So basically, they're kicking off their Citizens Initiative to legalize medical marijuana, which is a giant step for a state like Florida.
No kidding. 19 years for just resin in your bowl?
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of bad laws in Florida.
Crazy. Well, and then Connecticut. Ding, ding, yay, has
and
now-
this one through the legislature.
This one through the legislature. Yeah, this one, Connecticut just now has a medical marijuana.
Number 17.
It awaits the governor's signature, but he's going to sign it.
Yeah, he said
So this is number 17, right, Russ?
Right, 17
so
medical
17
marijuana
out of
states.
50 states have medical marijuana.
And just last year, Connecticut was the 14th decrim state.
There you go. So we're making
the
progress.
Bricks fall. See the wall fall. Well, on hold here, we have Lindsey Rinehart. Hi, Lindsey, you with us?
I am.
Great. Lindsey is with the Compassionate Choice Act. That's it.
It's Compassionate Idaho, and it was the Idaho Medical Choice Act.
Medical choice,
Medical
thank
Choice
you.
Act.
So, and you guys were working to get onto the 2012 ballot, correct? And I hear that ended up not happening.
That's all correct, yes.
So I hear you got good plans, though.
I do. We're rewriting the petition right now, and we'll resubmit sometime this month, and then we'll hear back from the Attorney General on it and start circulation hopefully by June.
And you guys made some changes to this initiative, right? There were some concerns that had come up in the earlier initiative that you've reworded to make it stronger?
Yeah, some of the changes are small but important. Like, we needed to include AIDS and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
There were different suggestions about the wording for primary caregiver and specialist. There was a lot of suggestions on the plant limit versus the harvest versus the possession limit. And we hope that most of those things have been equaled out a little bit more.
And refresh my memory on how many signatures you need to get and what sort of a timeline. So you guys will be kicking it off within the next month or so, and then you'll have how long to get the signatures?
Okay, so how Idaho law works on petitions is you have 18 months or until April 30th, whichever comes first. So if we introduce this month, we would have 18 months from the time we get it back from the Attorney General. And so that would put us finishing about January of 2014 and give us the rest of the year to campaign. So we don't know the actual signature goal yet until after we submit. From what I understand, it runs off of the last election's turnout numbers on the goal that you have to accomplish.
Right, so they may wait until this election's concluded to give you a number?
I'm not sure. I'm really hoping that it goes off the gubernatorial election since the voter turnout was so low.
That would be a nice little boost. Yeah. I know in Oregon, it's something like 8%, I think, for a statutory from the last governor, the gubernatorial election. So, and I think a lot of states do it off that way. So you're probably right. It would be off that last election. But no, that's great. I know that you guys have been working on this for a few years, and it seems like, you know, each time you guys are trying, you guys are learning a little bit more. And like we were just talking about right before we brought you on, there's a lot of different states looking at these issues and making progress. So every year we get closer and closer to seeing everybody coming on board.
Well, where's Tom Trail with his initiative that he's trying to get through? Has there been any movement on that? Bill, what is it?
It's a legislative bill.
Bill Trail.
So he's had introduced the Idaho Compassionate Care Act into the legislature. And what happened was it didn't go anywhere again. And Tom, on his way out, was awesome enough to get us a meeting with the governor of our state. But unfortunately, it didn't get to go very far. But we at least got to meet with the governor and let him know what was going on and let him know what we would like to see happen in our state.
I have to say, Lindsey, coming from Idaho, I have to say good on you, because I know you guys are working with a bunch of young activists. A lot of you are green, and you're finding your way through this political process, and you're not discouraged, which inspires me, because I know there are hurdles in Idaho, not just with the politics there, but also with people feeling comfortable. And I know I commend you for keeping the dialogue going and open up the communication between those people that don't know anything about the cannabis world. And I know it's not easy confronting people day in and day out that just simply do not agree with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It is hard work, I am not discouraged at all. In fact, it's kind of weird. Ever since we did miss the goal, it's like the outpouring of support has just grown, and more people heard about us even through that.
Yes.
And to give up after putting so much time into it would just seem ludicrous at this point, because I'm not moving away. I'm not leaving my state. And if I have to deal with them, they have to deal with me. So there's people here that are sick that shouldn't have to wait. I'm trying to, it dawned on me the other day, like, I want to cure my MS. I've wanted to for a while. I've thought, since I've done all my research now, that I'm pretty sure I can. I mean, I have it legal. But then I started to realize that, like, mine is aggressive relapsing and remitting MS. So eventually that's going to turn into progressive MS. So now I'm against a time clock, just like everybody else. We've got patients just dying from cancer. And they're being forced to wait. So what I'm trying to do, in addition to the petition, Compassionate Idaho, is handing out the Idaho Medical Choice Act to legislators and senators to see if maybe they would like to introduce it, and if we can find co-sponsors for them so that we can go at it more than one way.
Lindsey, last year I was very inspired by the Idaho Hope Festival. You guys had the first annual, from what I understood, Hope Festival out there, and a lot of people turned out. Are we expecting to have another Hope Festival this coming year?
Absolutely. Last year turned out awesome. We expected under 1,000 people, and the police estimated 2,000 to 4,000, so we were just kind of blown away.
It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was a lot of work and a lot of fun.
It always is, yeah.
It was really rewarding, and I expect that it will be again this year. We raised our crowd expectancy limit to about 5,000, and it's still a one-day festival. We're gathering vendors now. We're gathering volunteers now. We're gathering entertainment now. So if people want to go to IdahoHopeFest.com or IdahoHempFest.com, they both go to the same place, and they can sign up for different things there, and we're on Facebook too.
And approximately when is that festival going to take place again?
It's September 30th in Ann Morrison Park this year.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that was a blast, and it was so inspiring. Like I said, it was amazing to me coming from Oregon, where it's kind of become a little bit of a complacency, to see everybody out there, and the police even were just pretty incredible.
Well, it was interesting how when you and I had approached the police, and one had a lot to say, and the other one was like, "No, comment. I'm not touching that one." And I think that's generally what you experience when you're in Idaho. Is there are people who are willing to talk about it, and then those are like, too much to risk. I'm not putting my neck out there. But what are you going to do? What's different about this year? What do you guys have planned this year that's going to be different than last year? Anything new?
Well, the band lineup, we're going to have some of the bands from last year and some new ones. The speaker lineup will be, updated as well. We expect a lot more vendors with expansion on more of the education areas. We've got, let's see, I don't know. We're expecting a lot of different things. We're still planning a lot.
I hope that one thing is the same as last year. I loved that you guys had the little kiddie area. It was wonderful. It was very entertaining for the kids, and it allowed
We're adding to it.
Yeah, that family element was very much there.
Well,
yeah,
I hope you don't lose that. I mean, I think one of the things that we kept talking about on the trip home was we had to keep asking, is that medicated? Is that not medicated? Is that medicated? Because out here at all of the events that we go to, everything is medicated. If you don't ask, you're going to end up, walking on your lips on the way home. But it was kind of strange that was a little bit different. And I think that's what kept it family friendly, is that there wasn't any smoking there. Everybody that was there to talk about, no gray area.
Black.
It's all black, yeah. Well,
we have zero citations, zero arrests.
Nice.
There was you could smell cannabis in the air occasionally, but for the most part, people were respected that it's still illegal in our state, which really helped us.
Yeah.
And now our relationship with the police is better because they were nervous about us.
Sure. Yeah, what do you mean you're going to hold a cannabis event in this park? So, Lindsey, what if somebody wants to donate to the Hope Fest? Is there a place where they can do that or find out more information? Where can they go to volunteer if they're in Idaho?
They can go to IdahoHopeFest.com or IdahoHempFest.com.
And then to get involved in the initiative, the Compassionate Medical Choice Act, that website, do you have one up?
Right now we still have the Compassionate Idaho website, and that's the CompassionateIdaho.webs. It's WEBS.
Okay.
.com. And we are officially getting CompassionateIdaho.com in order, so I'm really excited to people have to watch for those to come soon.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate the work that you're doing out there. Keep up the good work and keep us posted on that Hope Fest. That was a blast, and I think I might want to come back to Idaho again
I'm
this
coming
year.
back. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
So, would love to have you. Would love to have you.
So I'm looking forward to it. You have a great night. Thank you for being on, and good luck with getting the signatures you need moving forward for 2014.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Have a good night.
Good night, Lindsey. Thank you.
You're listening to A Different View. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back.
That old draft beer will make you cry. And good corn liquor make you fight. And Jose.
I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer.
I'm a journalist.
I'm a student.
I'm a teacher.
I'm a representative.
I have cancer.
The outdated laws of prohibition are more dangerous than the plant itself.
I lost my scholarship.
I was fired.
20 million arrests since 1965. This is getting ridiculous.
Our prisons are overcrowded with non-violent offenders.
We have the opportunity to change.
This is costing our country billions of dollars.
Making my family and I fight in a courtroom is difficult enough when I'm already fighting through chemotherapy.
There's no reason to be scared by tradition anymore.
We can stop this.
We can stop this.
We are the American people. We can stop this, and you have our support. We're old,
Young.
Straight.
Gay.
we're every race and nationality.
And we're not going to give up.
You can tax it.
You can regulate it. Apply age restrictions.
You can create millions of new jobs.
We can save our economy.
President Obama?
It's time for legalization.
Legalization.
Yes.
We
Can.
Yo ho! Doing it doggy style. U.S. Custom Coast Guard dope dog nickname Bustin'. Like most dope sniffing dogs, you gotta have it. Trained to have it. Pick up the tracks of the traffic, trapping like a rabbit up the coastline. K9, control substance retriever, receiver of the golden nose award for leading to the cash, cashing in on the stash. Now he's in line for his issue of the booty. Never do he do a line in the line of duty. He's a dope dog. U.S. Custom Coast Guard dope dog, keen sense of smell, tracking the telltale trails of cartel dope boats. Big dope, never a gram of OZ, kilo, too low key. Gotta be tons of P-blow, bells of lumbo, while other dogs sniffing one another's tails. He can track the profits from a dope sale straight to the stink account. Big banks, banking on laundering dirty money, not stinking. He follow his nose.
Welcome back to A Different View, and the music you've been listening to all this show comes from the NORML Hempilation and Hempilation 2 albums. Available online. Visit Amazon.com or normal.org to get your copy of all these songs and more from NORML. And now, back to Jennifer and Iva.
Listening to A Different View. Jennifer Alexander, and I'm Iva Cunningham. And we kind of wanted to talk about
The blunt wrap.
The blunt
Wait,
wrap.
This is the blunt wrap. No, so go ahead.
Well, this is kind of where Jennifer and I get, kind of finalize, our irritations or the rock in the shoe, if you will, or, those things that we see that maybe we aren't necessarily paying attention to, but irritate us. This is our soapbox moment, I guess.
So earlier, we were discussing this story, and you've got it over there somewhere.
We were talking about, we started off talking about, people growing in our national forests. Then we went to why people are this medical marijuana, why people are vilifying medical marijuana when a grower takes, pounds out of the state to another state and so on and so forth. And so we got on the subject of the economics of
the whole scenario. This is going on.
Why would people do that? Why would people take those risks? Well, it's economics. If in Washington, Oregon, and California, it's very saturated with growers. And as a business person, it doesn't matter what your business is, as a business person, your objective to stay alive is to have more clientele. So if the clientele here has, if there's more product than demand, you want to go to where there's less product and more demand. So it makes sense that people would take their business somewhere else where there's more demand. And, I think somebody said it was 150 an ounce here, and it went from 300 an ounce to 150, since medical marijuana in the last 10 years. I'm thinking, woohoo. But, if you need that 300 an ounce, you're going to be willing to take the risk where you can get that 300 an ounce.
Well, and I think that the way that you're portraying it is as the economic terminology, whatever, but there's the demand side and the supply side.
Right.
And I think that the reality is that there's certain motivations that get people to be in that supply side.
Sure.
For instance,
lack of jobs.
If I'm 18, 19, 20 years old and I don't have the experience to get a high paying job, especially if I live somewhere out, say like in the Midwest, making minimum wage, which is I think $5.15 to $5.50 an hour, which isn't anything.
Right.
And then I get a felony because I get picked up for doing something, whatever, with marijuana. At that point in time, my options have just changed.
Right.
Now it's not as easy for me to go get that 9-to-5 job. Of course, I'm going to be looking for ways to make money still. I'm not just going to stop living because I've got less job prospects. I'm going to be more creative in my job prospects.
Just for accuracy's sake, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour.
That's really recently happened, though, because
July 24th, 2009.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it went up like $2. It was a big to do to bring that up. But it was like $5.15 when we lived there just a few years ago. and I mean, but seriously, going from that to even if it was, $10 an hour for the minimum wage, how much money can you make if you're a pot dealer, say, in the Midwest? A lot more than minimum wage. And if you're going to make it really difficult for me to get a normal job, I'm not going to fight you. I'm
have
going to
one
find
choice.
a way
You
to
got
survive.
to be an entrepreneur. That's the choice that you have
Right.
left.
So this is how people end up in this trade, though,
Right,
because it's
exactly.
a way to survive.
It's all right. What are you going to do if you get picked up and you have a federal
Felony?
Felony, God.
Wasn't sure which word you were looking for there.
That word.
Starts with F, 6 letters.
Yeah, 6 letters. But yeah, no, this changes
10
your
seconds,
life.
Bob.
It changes your future. It changes your prospects. And
Your choices from that point on are have to be different for you just to survive. It's about surviving then. You're not going to give up. You're not going to crawl in a hole. You can't do that. Life keeps going on.
Right.
And you have to make you have to make choices that now will just keep a roof over your head and, food on the table. And
well, and the younger you are when this all starts, the more likely it's going to destroy your future. I mean, if I'm 50 years old and I get picked up on a marijuana charge, I've probably figured most everything out by now. If I have to go to jail for a little while, it sucks. It's going to cost money, whatever. But I've got a life that I've been living. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're 18 and you get picked up, this now impacts your ability to go to college and get an education. You're denied student loans.
Right.
You're prevented from working. You're prevented from renting in most places.
Right.
So if you don't already own your own house, which they'd probably seize anyway.
So it affects your job, your future, your housing situation, credit. All those things are affected by that. So you have no choice but to move back underground and to find something that will keep.
And that's not necessarily to say that, you have to sell cannabis if this happens.
Right.
It's
No,
to
I'm not
say
saying
that. It
that.
becomes much more easier to accept those choices as a way of solving these problems.
Right.
Than to fight against the system.
Well, you know how to do it, and you know how you got busted last time. Chances are it just makes a smarter, dealer, if you will.
So while we're talking, Blunt, about all of this stuff, I have issues with this article that prompted this conversation has to do with a group of people getting charged with conspiracy to cultivate marijuana. They found 40,000 plants, but they were just conspiring to start with. but it was all taking place in our national forests. So there's a bunch of different ways that this happens, but ultimately these are public lands that we're destroying with grand scale cultivation for whatever reason. And then, coming from the Midwest, a lot of the marijuana, at least when I lived there, and I've been here in Oregon almost 9 years, I think now, but when I lived in the Midwest, most of it came from Mexico. And we know that there's problems with the Mexico weed being transported throughout the United States. But our local law enforcement here is flipping out that it's our local marijuana that's making it around. And from my perspective, I'd much rather see Oregon weed sold in Indiana than Mexican weed, because then I know that we're not fueling that drug cartel population, and it's better weed.
But I mean, do you really think with the amount of weed that's coming out of Oregon, Washington, California, and other states here locally that we would really need low quality weed?
No, that's
go
just
up to
it.
Indiana.
We're competing the cartels right out of business, in my opinion, unless they're coming locally and growing it, which which is the claim with some of these, public lands things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that most marijuana smokers don't want to see it being grown in our national forests and would much rather if Joe the farmer down the street could grow it.
Right, and make a living off of it, yeah.
So it's like we can keep making progress in rational decisions and rational policies, or we can continue to fuel the things that we're claiming are the problems in the first place.
Right.
The war going on at our borders and the immigration problems and all of
Mhm.
this is a result of the prohibition. It's a result of this entire paradigm that we've created. Nobody needs to be hiding in a forest growing it if Joe the farmer
You
can
grow it, right? Yeah. There's no point in destroying the forest because there's no place. You don't need to hide it. There's no incentive to hide it. In
Right.
fact, there's incentive to bring it out in the open.
Well, and let's just be frank. This is Oregon. If we had the organic grown by your local farmer label, we'd buy it.
Oh yeah,
it's
we
Oregon.
would. Yeah, that's right. We would.
We want to know that. That's how it works.
And frankly, I think most people would. Most people,
No,
that's what they
really.
want.
And
They
I
want-
mean, I loved when I first moved here, seeing as you cross over the river that separates the south side or the west side from the east side of Portland. There's a big "Made in Oregon" sign, which has since changed. But the "Made in Oregon" sign, and I always loved that because it was so dominant around here. We want it made in Oregon,
yeah.
and we don't want it made in the national forest.
forests or across the border or driven up from wherever, and we want our own. We want it. We want the money to stay here and flourish in our economies and create stable neighborhoods and stable jobs. But it's saturated here because the market is so tiny. It's only medical, and if it were legal, there could be a lot more consumers buying it from the farmers here locally, not to mention all the other products that could be sold and manufactured, due to hemp or cannabis.
Right. So to wrap this back around to kind of cover like what we're talking about here, the economics of the pseudo-legal marijuana market, the reality is that no matter what we do, this market is there.
Right.
And we can push it away from us
It's
and
always
not
been
benefit
there.
from it, or we can grasp it and profit from it and own it, regulate it in the way that we want to see it regulated and benefit from it in the way that we want our community to benefit. I want to see our farmers growing hemp, and I know that not
I do
all
too.
people necessarily do, but there's enough of them that in areas, and I want to see that. I want to see our state flourishing. I want to see our Southern Oregon farmers able to grow as much pot as they want and benefit from that, just like the local vineyards
Right.
do with their wine. I don't drink wine, but I think it's amazing what they do, and I want to see that with cannabis in Southern Oregon.
I do too.
And-
I would love to be able to, Newburgh is the big town with all the vineyards, and if you drive out there, it's gorgeous. I would love to be able to go out there, in the fall and see all the, the harvest of the cannabis plants or,
Right.
the hemp plants. I mean, it would be beautiful. Can you imagine that? I mean, instead of stopping to get, this is my little fantasy, stopping to get a sip of wine, you could stop and get a smoke or whatever from, one of the farms, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
A tasting tour. Oh,
tasting
I can't
tour.
wait until the day.
I know. Wouldn't that be great? This one is grown next to blueberries, and this one is grown next to our grapes, and this one is.
Well, and I grew up in Indiana, very close to Shipshewana, which was the Amish community, and it was always great to just go and see how people lived differently than I did. To eat the home cooked meals that weren't like my parents cooked. I mean, we made similar food, but it wasn't the same no matter what. To see them in their wagons, it's a different culture.
Right.
You don't have to jump into the marijuana culture just because we're legalizing it or decriminalizing it or whatever, changing it. It will become a cultural difference. Like you said, Newburgh is where all these vineyards are. There aren't vineyards downtown Portland,
Right.
but then there are the shops downtown Portland where we're selling the wines crafted in these local vineyards. So it's boosting everybody's economy with that sort of balance.
Well, if you go out to Sauvie Island, they have all the farms. You can go out there and buy hops if you want to. I don't see any reason why I couldn't go out to Sauvie Island to somebody's farm and pick up some indica, pick up some sativa, pick up whatever, and then along with my tomatoes and my strawberries and head home. I guess for me, that's how it should be. That's what seems like the natural progression of allowing our farmers to grow.
And I think that's an eventual thing. And unfortunately, then I have to have that reality check that we can't go from prohibition to there overnight.
Right. I know.
But that's where we should be headed.
Right. That's the end goal, I think, for everybody. It's just baby steps to get there.
just rational views, looking at the whole picture and seeing what we're doing. I don't want people growing on our public lands. I don't want our kids going to jail. I don't want any of this stuff happening.
I'd really like for people to be able to grow outside in their gardens instead of in their houses where we're consuming so much energy that's unnecessary, and where this plant can really, change our carbon footprint.
The one thing that's amazing about hemp that most people kind of skip over in the hemp discussion is how it cleanses the soil.
Right.
Of all of the toxic substances, the pollutants, these things, it actually will kind of cleanse the soil. That alone is huge for farmers.
Oh yeah.
I'm ready to see us taking advantage of these.
It's better than the chemicals that they pour on the soils to bring the soil nutrients back into the soil. I mean, it was like always at the end of summer, right? Well, like when they were, getting the soil ready for winter, they'd pour out lye, and I don't know if you remember driving to like Emmett Rust, but it just stinks. Anyway, we're going to take another quick break.
No, this is the end of the show.
Is it already?
We've hit the end. So our replays are, every Monday at 8 p.m. You'll catch us live at live.normal.org. And then Tuesday, 2 a.m., Friday, 8 a.m., Wednesday, 2 p.m., and Saturday, 4 p.m. are the replays. We'll see you next Monday at 8 p.m.
No, we're going to say one last thing.
Ran out of...
You're listening to the Normal Network.
Hi, I'm Radical Russ. One of the best things about marijuana is the wonderful aroma. But when you travel a lot like I do, that aroma becomes a suspicious smell. That's why I endorse stealth-products.com, the leaders in smell-proof containers. From smell-proof vacuum bags to smell-proof backpacks and duffel bags, all the way to smell-proof digital safes, stealth-products.com has you covered. Stealth-products.com brings you safe, secure, odorless layers of protection with activated carbon fiber. Backpacks and duffel bags are simple black so as not to attract attention with a logo or flashy design. Now, nothing is perfectly odor controlled from the detection of drug dogs, but with proper vigilance, containers from stealth-products.com will help you avoid nosy humans.
You're now listening to Elliot Beats.
Stealth-products.com. Stealth-products.com.
So let's see if we can get started. There's a fire